Way to go, y'all. All right, so I am excited. So today we have the coffee chat, and we wanted to highlight just some of the work and challenges and successes of standalone rape crisis centers. We couldn't have all of them here today, but just to give some context, in the state of Texas, y'all know that we have 254 counties. That's a lot of damn counties. That's a lot of space that we are trying to cover in the state of Texas. Also, when it comes to sexual assault services, we have 73 sexual assault programs, right? So we have all this 254 counties, 73 programs. And of those 73, there are only 7 standalone rape crisis centers. Think about it. In the state of Texas, we only have 7. That's it. And we have 3 of them here. So I think that's a really unique thing to have a standalone sexual assault program. So we're going to talk about what does that mean? What does that look like? But before we do that, I want these 3 brilliant women to introduce themselves. So if you can just, before we go into the fun question, introduce yourselves, where you're from, and then we'll go into a little bit about your agency. But now just about you, your title, where you're from.
Yes, they are. Okay, I am Kristen Murray. I am the CEO at Voice of Hope. We were originally established as the Lubbock Rape Crisis Center. We're in Lubbock, so we serve Lubbock and the surrounding 11 counties for all of our services, and then Lubbock and the surrounding 22 counties for the CSAE program out of the governor's office.
So you do human trafficking as well as?
We do the crisis response for sexual assault, and then we also offer the human trafficking services.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Wendy Hanna, and I'm the Executive Director at the Turning Point Rape Crisis Center in Collin County. For those of you that don't know, that's north of Dallas County. And we provide not only advocacy, education, and counseling for those impacted by sexual violence, but we do have a forensic nursing program that travels to 4 counties and about 29 locations. And we provide medical accompaniment alongside that program. And this is our 40th anniversary we're celebrating this year. So we've tracked down 2 of our 3 founders, and they will be at our luncheon in November. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah.
I'm Megan Morales. I'm with the Dallas Area Rape Crisis Center. I'm the Director of Advocacy. Our CEO is Amy Jones, is out of town, so I'm just filling in for her. But we are the Independent Rape Crisis Center in Dallas County. So we serve survivors of sexual assault 13 years and older in Dallas County and the surrounding areas.
All right, thank y'all. So I've got a fun question. So, okay, what's something totally random or fun about you that has nothing to do with your job, like a party trick, a strange collection, or a childhood dream that never left?
I know this one's hard. You'd be better off probably asking my staff. I don't. Let's see. So there's a meme right now going around that says your 40s are those really strange years where some of your friends are having grandchildren and some of you have babies. I have a 3-year-old. So I have a toddler and several of my childhood friends have grandchildren. And so we're in that really, strange stage where I'm really enjoying the fact that I left my boys home with their dad and I'm getting lots of sleep at the conference.
Oh, yay. Good for you.
I fly fish. So I'm a fly fisherman. So I looked that up later in life. Matter of fact, my screensaver on my phone is my boyfriend and I fly fishing, catching a rainbow trout. So been all over New Mexico, Colorado. I think our next trip is, we're hoping to go to New Zealand. So yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's cool.
fly fish. Everywhere we go is fly fish.
That's cool.
That's a good thing.
I'm not sure why with these questions, but every time I'm like, there's nothing interesting. I played on the junior tennis circuit when I was younger, and I could not hit a ball even if I tried now, but I've downgraded to pickleball. So that's kind of my fave thing right now. Yeah.
I'll share mine. So y'all are so much more, what's the word, graceful than me? Because when I thought the answer for me was, I went to A&M, y'all, a long time ago. So A&M University, any other Aggies in the house? Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's no, it's just me. My God. Okay. Anyway, so I went to A&M, and at A&M, when you're in college, y'all know what you have a little fun, a little drink. I learned because the quarters was the big game back then. This is terrible. There's nobody in here younger than 18, right? All right, yay, my other Gen Xer, I said Gen X thing, I think, quarters. But I got really good, like I never got drunk, if you will, sorry, because I would do the quarter off my nose and it would just land in the cup every time, so I was like, oh, that's my strange party trick. I can still do it, so if anyone wants to play quarters. Right. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so what I would like for y'all to do now, so we'll start with you, Kristen. So just tell us a little bit about the program, what's going on, some of the unique things that y'all have going on, and let's see, yep, all those things, just so we can learn about you.
All those things.
All those-
So this is actually our 50th anniversary.
Whoa.
So we were established in 1975. I'm told that we're the second oldest rape crisis center in the state of Texas, that we opened right behind Austin. But we've actually never had to close our doors due to any kind of funding issues. And so we're very proud of that. We are a standalone rape crisis center. And I feel like the team of advocates that we have are definitely the heart of our organization. One of our founders is still alive and with us. Sally is 95 and alive and well and comes to our events, and our staff just absolutely adores her. And so we always cherish any time that we get to spend with her, because we know those days obviously are numbered, but we certainly enjoy it. And so our organization is a little unique in the fact that, I mean, we are the 24-hour response. We respond to hospitals, we respond with law enforcement. We have the crisis hotline. We now offer counseling in the office. We are the CSA advocates with the Office of the Governor. We do offer case management for the adult sex trafficking. And so we are the Rape Crisis Center, but we did feel like, as the Rape Crisis Center, that we were best equipped to take on the sex trafficking as that came into the area as well, because we had the expertise in working in the crisis field. And so we took that on pretty early. We started looking at that in about 2012 and really started educating our community on what that looked like. We're one of the few in the state that have the federal prevention grant. And so Kenneth Castillo, who has worked with a lot of you guys, has done a lot of great work in that realm. We have a community garden that he works really hard at, and we grow produce, and he teaches the kids how to use the produce and make meals for their family that they can do safely, so they can go to the garden and they can get food and then they can feed their families. So we have a lot of great programs that I feel like are doing a lot of different elements. And so obviously we want to stop this crime, but then at the same time, we want to be able to step in alongside them when it happens, and, you know, be their person when it's their hardest day. We have a great program and a great partnership with the Lubbock County Detention Center. If for any of you guys that have worked with the detention centers, you know, a lot of times, sometimes that can be a little bit of a combative relationship. Our advocates have actually bridged that gap in a way that the people that are in detention no longer have to make an outcry to the staff. They can actually just request services on the systems in the jail, and that comes directly to my staff and bypasses their staff completely. So they still maintain their confidentiality without having to disclose that trauma to the officers and making those outcries to them. And so I feel like we've made a lot of progress, and I think a lot of that is because of the relationships that we have in our community, and a lot of that's because of how long we've been there.
I was going to ask you really quick on that note. So I know that you all started to do human trafficking. And so you started off as, you know, a standalone sexual assault program. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to do that? I know when I went to visit you all, I was so impressed with how you were able to do two distinctive victim areas. And then you were also able to infuse the best of both worlds so that both sets could could benefit from that, but they're also, not that you separate them, but that's the way I was looking at it. So can you talk a little bit about how you infused human trafficking work into Rape Crisis Center work?
Absolutely. And I think we're very fortunate in the fact that with the crisis response, we are who responds in the crisis with law enforcement or at the hospital for children or adults in Lubbock at any of our hospitals. And so when you get that initial call, you don't know if it's sexual assault or sex trafficking. The people on the other end, I mean, and truly depending on the age, a lot of times the survivor doesn't even know or disclose a lot of times what's going on. And so until the advocate is sitting there and has been there for a few hours, it takes us a while to kind of understand what's going on and notice whether or not we notice the signs of maybe this is human trafficking. And that's when we started noticing that human trafficking was happening in Lubbock and thought, okay, this is happening in our city. We need to do something about it. And so we started looking into it. We noticed that it was going on. And so we started doing more case management. We started getting more training on it. And once we started having advocates that specialized in it, we were able to offer more specialized services to those individuals. A rape crisis client certainly needs services, but they aren't necessarily typically going to want services nearly as long. But with our agency, they never time out of our services. And so, I mean, that's what we tell people all the time. You can want services today, you can want services in a week, you can decide you don't want us right now, and 3 years from now, something can trigger you and you can come back. And so that's the big difference between us and maybe like the DA's office or aging out of, you know, a program at 18 or things of that nature. But with what we've seen with the human trafficking is they need a much longer term case management, and it's a lot more intense. And so those case managers walk a much different path with their clients.
Do y'all do children and adult survivors of human trafficking?
We do. So we do basically 12 and up for human trafficking. We have had our youngest survivor was 8. So I mean, we don't say no well, because if there's a survivor, we're going to step in and help. We certainly hope that we don't see a survivor of human trafficking earlier than that. But I believe that familial trafficking is happening in Lubbock at a much higher rate than what we know or see or can pinpoint. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, I know that's really, do you all partner with federal agencies with the human trafficking work?
Yes, we
Okay.
partner, and Lubbock is great at our community resources and who we partner with. We have care coordination that is just relaunching that we've taken under our umbrella. And so we have the CSA program, we have care coordination, we work really closely with the FBI and the DA's office and all of the different law enforcement. We have great resources that we can pick up the phone and call that are always willing to help. But the best thing that I feel like we've done is being invited out onto the ops with law enforcement when they understand that human trafficking is not something that these victims need to be arrested for. And so they need to be arresting the people who are purchasing the sex, and they need to be arresting the people who are selling the women or the men into sex. But the people that are being sold are not the criminals.
Yeah.
And so when they bring us along on the ops and they arrest the people who need to be arrested, and then they bring us the victims that we can have a conversation with, those operations go much better.
I bet. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right, Wendy.
Again, a standalone rape crisis center providing, you know, the standard education, advocacy, and counseling. I think, like I said earlier, probably our unique program is our forensic nursing program. So in 2002, just a brief history, there was 3 nurses that were independent sexual assault nurses, SANES, that were trying to do exams in our county. There was, at the time, probably 8 small county hospitals, and so none of them really had a big enough volume to employ sexual assault nurses. So probably a lot of y'all in rural areas can appreciate that, and to keep them certified. So 3 nurses kind of did it on their own, and they build local law enforcement agencies, and it really wasn't a sustainable program at that time. And then in 2000, I came in 2014, and the SART was already very well established. And the nurses were part of that SART. And there was just a lot of grumblings about, trying to keep the program going, sustainability with only 3 nurses. And, they're independent. They had other jobs. They didn't have the ability to recruit, to do continuing education, to do all of the things that you need to do to build a program. And so at about that time, 2015, Eloise House in Austin, is anybody here from Austin? Opened their sexual assault program. And Emily LeBlanc and Jenny Black, I will always be forever indebted to them. I think they're no longer there, but I reached out to them because they had started a program and employed nurses there on their dual agency. So some of us from our SART took a little road trip down to Austin, our DA's office, some local law enforcement agencies, the nurses, and kind of looked at what they were doing, and they pretty much gave us their playbook. And the intent was to open something in 3 years, but fast forward, there was a grant that came through that we were fortunate to get, and we opened Courtney Safe Place in January of 2018. The namesake is now our board president. She was not at the time. She was a young woman who was instrumental in getting the SANE initiative in Dallas County, 15 years prior to that, as a result of her own victimization at an early age, and no sexual assault nurses really, even in Dallas County. So she gave us some seed money to help us get going as well, and it's been thriving ever since. There's been some changes in the legislation that have really helped agencies like us, and that is, at the time, we had to bill local law enforcement, and so we had to set up billing for 40 different law enforcement agencies that we may serve. And there was a task force. Lavinia was part of that task force, Masters and Victoria Nieve, and that kind of rallied in Dallas to get that changed at a legislative level, and we were able to start direct billing the Attorney General's office. So that's how that program stays sustainable. We now have about 16 nurses, a director, a manager. They're all PRN, and like I said, they go to 29 locations, 2 universities, campuses, and we see about 600 cases annually. And so we have contracts with all the big healthcare hospital agencies in that area. Some of our other unique programs is we have an LGBTQ outreach group that was kind of spearheaded by our outreach coordinator and a volunteer who saw a real need in his community. He's one of our advocates, actually. He's our advocate of the year, actually. And he's a volunteer. And so he came to us about 2 years ago and said, I see that there's a real need in my community. And so we've started an outreach that has really kind of taken off on its own, kind of organically. And we've set up some support groups, and they literally do, community outreach in the streets, going to where they are, and working with the Resource Center, who is a big partner with us, especially the AIDS Resource Center provides us with all of our HIV medications, because as y'all know, those can be free. And so they do that free for us as a great partner. And then probably also our prevention program. So before we even applied for RPE, we were not one of the recipients of the current RPE program through the Attorney General's office. We partnered with one of our local healthcare agencies and 2 other community agencies, Community Lifeline and Destiny's Leaders, and formed a prevention program called Building Better Futures. And so we work with educating families on income, financial literacy, mentoring their young kids to be leaders and providing, and the draw is providing food boxes and meals for them to enroll in the program. And there's a stipend that we're able to pay. So that's where we are.
So Wendy, you may have mentioned this, what all counties, is it just, whatever county Plano's in, or Collin? Do you serve any other counties with the same services?
We do. So we go to the same services specifically. We have some that are in Dallas County, that's SMU, UT Southwestern. Started a contract with the VA and that got shut down with the current administration. So got that contract signed and it got yanked, unfortunately. Then we go to, I think I'm out to Forney. I don't even know what county that is, but our collaboration with Baylor Scott and White is Forney, Lake Point. I think that's, I don't know what those counties are, Rockwall, Rowlett County, somewhere in that area, I think. But mainly, the services are in Collin County because it's just grown. There's
Yeah.
like, we just opened another hospital called, I guess, Baylor Scott and White PGA. So it's just probably has twice as many hospitals as it did even 15 years ago.
And Wendy, so as your same program is growing because the need and demand is there, how have you managed to keep up the advocacy component to
Yeah.
keep up with that demand?
Yeah, that's been a challenge. So we kind of split off a few years ago and had two different advocacy teams. And so the one that really serves south of Collin County has its own set of advocates, and they're all paid advocates, and they're on shifts. And so we have day shift, we have night shift, and we have weekend shifts. Because we were really struggling with getting volunteers that lived, North County, Plano can be all the way up in Melissa and Anna. I mean, it can take an hour and plus change just to get down to some of the areas in Dallas. So that's one group that's currently based out of a hospital. And then the other group is made up of a kind of a mix of paid advocates and staff during the weekdays. We restructured our case management program into what we call Survivor Care Advocate Program. And we brought in-house 4 advocates that are paid. And they do, we used to have like legal advocacy separate. And so we'd have legal advocate, and then we'd had 2 case managers, and then we had advocates that just did medical accompaniment during the days. And we kind of combined that and brought them in-house. And so we just found that we did a survey at one point. We did to our client base and in a quiz, and we just found that we were doing more handoffs than we wanted to do. So a medical advocate would see them in the field, and then we'd do a follow-up call, and then a case manager would talk to them, and then they needed legal advocacy services, and they didn't like being handed off, which I thought was a good thing that we had specialization, but come to find out that's not what they wanted.
Oh.
And so those that do medical accompaniment during the day will either manage that case. If they continue to be clients of ours, they provide the follow-up because they've had a connection. We have found that they're more likely to continue on with services if the person that reaches back out to them is somebody that they connected with and saw, and they don't have to tell their story again. And so those services, our follow-up services, and assistance with CVC and legal accompaniment are all done by one person that's had comprehensive training. And that service has grown, I just checked, like 56% in the last year. Yeah, so it's a lot for
So
them.
2 things there I wanted to say. I love that you, thought this is a good idea, but then you asked survivors and thought, oh, okay, maybe not. And then you switched. Kudos and congratulations I think that's a really great thing. And now that you said that you're seeing the increase and positive outcomes due to the change after you got the feedback from the clients that you serve, that's wonderful. And the second thing, I think the biggest thing or the biggest question that we get and we talk through with a lot of rape crisis centers and sexual assault programs is how do we keep the advocates 24/7? And it sounds like you have figured that out too. So congratulations on that.
I'm going to add real quick to the our counseling program also, there was a grant that was offered through the governor's office, and I don't know if it was, and we applied for it again. And that does specialized EMDR is what we've used it for. But we hired one counselor also that all of our counselors are trained in EMDR. That's when they come, we pay for that. But this particular council, it's called Early Trauma Intervention. And so we have been able to, through kind of this restructure of our advocacy program, also kind of, I don't know if you want to sell to the, when they're calling and doing follow-up. This EMDR crisis intervention program is an evidence-based program that if you get somebody in, most of y'all probably know this, a lot of our counseling clients don't come in until later, right? It's very rare to see somebody that comes in like within weeks or months. And so, you said you never, your door's always open. And most of our clients, I think the average is, at least 11 years before they ever come back in to say, I think this is impacting my life, this thing that happened. And so part of that is telling them on those calls that they have a program that's evidence-based. That doesn't mean you'll be in counseling for years and years and years, but we got to get you in. The whole idea of this type of modality is getting somebody in within a month of their trauma and really doing intensive 2-hour EMDR sessions. And it's been remarkable. I mean, I could tell you several stories. And one specific one I happened to be the advocate on just because I was taking call for somebody, and it was so traumatic. And she is literally, I was just touching base with her the other day, and she's like a different person. So it's really, really, if y'all can look into that, it's pretty remarkable.
Thank you, Wendy. Megan?
Sure. So a lot of our services at Darcy are very similar to some of the things they've talked about. But Darcy, so this is the Independent Rape Crisis Center for Dallas County. We are a little bit young in comparison. We just had our 15th anniversary. So Darcy was formed in 2010. A group of advocates got together and kind of realized this gap in services. And, there was, Dallas at the time was one of the largest urban cities in the country to not have a dedicated SANE program or a 24/7 hotline dedicated to survivors of sexual assault. And so that group of advocates partnered with Presbyterian of Dallas in their hospital-based SANE program, and that's kind of how Darcy was born. Come a long way since then. Our services, again, kind of fall into the same sort of similar buckets, I would say, of outreach education, advocacy, and counseling. On the outreach education side, our folks are out in the schools, our communities, churches, really anywhere that will have us. But one kind of unique shift that we've made in the last year and a half, and as far as our education efforts go, we restructured, and our director of education now, they will do the one-off presentations. If somebody requests a presentation, of course we will do it. However, instead of that being our full focus, has really shifted to building out curriculum and on-demand content that can be distributed out to the community, to the church leaders, school counselors, teachers, parents, these people that are having the conversations or responding to disclosures. So again, just another way to kind of get that information out there and touch as many people as we can. And then on the direct services side of things, we have our advocacy and we have our counseling. However, we're two different departments, but we function as one direct services team. We have a very collaborative model. All of our clients go through one universal intake, and that gets them immediate access to all of our counseling and advocacy services. So again, trying to reduce those barriers for clients to access services. They're not having to retell their story and go through the details multiple times. And that intake can be done by a counselor or an advocate. We also, so our advocacy is kind of separated into our crisis services and then our ongoing support. On the crisis services, we have our hotline. We respond to 4 different hospitals, and we also have a 24/7 legal advocacy component where the law enforcement agencies that we work with, if we have that agreement in place with them, they can call us anytime and we will dispatch an advocate within the hour to respond for either an initial report or an investigative interview, very similar to how we would respond to the hospital. We will respond to law enforcement. So that piece is relatively new and has been really cool to see come to life. And then for our 24/7 services, I mean, it is hard to staff. And one thing that we really heavily rely on is our volunteers and our volunteer program. We have about 100 active volunteers that are actually on the schedule month to month. But it takes a lot. They all go through our 40-hour training. You know, we have our volunteer coordinator. It's definitely brings its own challenges, but really is the only way that we can sustain those 24/7 services. We also have a team of full-time PRN staff advocates that help cover the after hours. And then during business hours, we have a full-time team of survivor advocates. We also several years back made the shift from having a case manager, a legal advocate, to calling them survivor advocates. And they do all of the legal advocacy, all of the case management. So from follow-up throughout their time. And again, there's no time limit as to how long they can work with our advocates. Again, sometimes it's just an initial follow-up call, answering some questions, providing that information. And sometimes you're working with someone over the course of several years as their case really navigates the criminal justice process. So it's just really tailored to the survivors that we're working with. And then on the counseling end of things, we have individual once a week counseling, but then we also have a new intensive support program. And this was really developed because we were seeing a lot of clients come in that needed more than that traditional once a week counseling. And so for those clients, instead of having them referred out to see somebody else and then come back to us, we now have intensive support counselors that can see them 2-3 times a week and really focus on that immediate support. And then we also hired a senior survivor advocate to focus on, because we know those clients also come along with more case management needs. So we hired a senior survivor advocate to really focus on the case management and legal advocacy needs for those survivors as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot. Wow, I love, I see a theme here with you all three, that it sounds like what you're doing, you're very survivor centered in all that you do. And you have tweaked programs, to ensure that survivors have what they need. You all see the importance of the continuity with a person and sexual assault advocacy, that dedication for the survivor to have self-determination, self-autonomy, and the no time limit. I love that because I have seen programs around that will say you only get 2 or 3 sessions in. That doesn't feel good to me, but I also don't run the programs and I'm not a therapist, so maybe it's a good thing, but I love to hear that there's no time limit, that you all just kind of meet them where they are. Nothing is a straight line. The healing is not linear. It goes up and down, and you all are built to handle that. So I know, you all know sexual assault is such a highly misunderstood, the misconception is really high when it comes to especially adult sexual assault, which is your main your clients, the victims that come to your doors. How do you do the work with that? Have you had any challenges? Because you don't have the cute kittens and puppies. You do not have the children. You do not have the elderly, or something that people, when they hear about it, they're like, oh, we want to give money. That doesn't happen with our work. Most folks don't know about you until they need to know about you. And then they're super excited that you're there and happy and thankful and grateful that you exist. So I didn't know if you each wanted to talk about some challenges in doing adult sexual assault work, and how you're navigating that in your community.
Certainly. So we actually changed our name in probably 2012. Don't quote me on the year. From the Lubbock Rape Crisis Center to Voice of Hope, and took some flack from district attorneys because they thought we were softening the crime. But we also had some community members that didn't want to be associated with the word rape, which was not why we did it. Our clients don't need to be reminded about why they're walking through our doors, which was much more why we did it. And so any decision that you make, you get both sides of the discussion, right? And so you either have people who buy into your mission and are there for a lifetime, or it's not for them. And we've seen that in our volunteers, we see that in our board, we see that in our staff. We have a fairly small staff in my eyes. There's about 18 of us. I would say probably more than 50% of our staff started out as volunteers. And so I think it's one of those things that if this is what you find your passion in and something that you find you're drawn to, you stick around for a lifetime. And so my office manager has been there for 29 years. My assistant director has been there for 15 years. And so it's just one of those things that you keep going. And so you have to find those partners that buy in and support you and are willing to tell other people why they support you. And so we're very fortunate that we have great relationships with the hospitals and with law enforcement, and that they tell our story. Because us telling our story, I mean, everybody knows, of course, we're going to toot our own horn, but when the chief of police gets up there and talks about it, or during COVID when other people weren't allowed in hospitals and the hospitals were saying, no, absolutely, they're coming in because they're part of us, and the survivors still need them, that made a huge difference. And so I think the community that's behind us is 100% behind us. It's just a matter of getting more of those people behind us. But like Rose said, until you know that you need us, you don't really know that we exist. And so that's a hard bridge to gap. And so this is our 50th anniversary. And so we're trying really hard because we feel like we have a unique opportunity this year to kind of remind people, hey, we're here and we started doing this work early. And there have been a lot of new organizations start in the last 10, 15 years doing this work for a lot of different reasons, but we've been here, we've been consistent. We just kind of fly under the radar while we do the work. But this is kind of what we do. And so trying to take that opportunity to re-educate the community that we're still here and this is what we do and this is what we offer. And trying to offer new services, offering more groups, and where before we didn't offer counseling. And for the longest time, we were in a tiny little house that was 1,100 square feet. So, I mean, we couldn't do a whole lot of things. And we've now moved into a great office space that's closer to 6,000 square feet. So we do have room for group therapy and counselors and things that for a long time we just didn't have the space for. And so we're able to do things that we weren't able to do before. And so we're really excited about the growth and the opportunity to support the community.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Wendy?
I think, yeah, I wish I had a magic pill about how to raise a lot of money. Because I think we all struggle with that. I mean, I know I do, and I don't have a development team. I'm an executive director. I write all the grants. I do any development that needs to be done. And so, anytime I get a little bit of money and I think I'm going to hire a grant writer or development person, I feel like we have a 40-person wait list, so I hire 2 counselors.
Oh,
I mean, I know that's short-sighted probably. We'd probably have a lot more money if I'd done that. And I'm not a real extroverted person, so I'm not one of those CEOs who speaks very beautifully and can get out in the community. I'm kind of a worker bee, so I think I had to learn quickly, and they're 10 years ago, like how to raise money without all of those things. And it's not, unfortunately, Rose, you said it, it's not a mission that people want to throw money at. And I came from an organization I wasn't, I worked at a children's hospital. People are throwing money at you all the time. When you walk in the room, they're like, here's more money and here's more money. And I thought this would be easy.
Yeah.
And it's not that way. And so I think where we have focused is a couple of areas. I don't have a board that has a deep pockets. I'm not one of those boards, they don't. I mean, if I could collectively look at the 12 people on my board, collectively, they've probably given under $10,000 a year. Well, maybe more than that because of one specific person, but I think where we focus on is I decided I wanted board members that had some kind of skill that we could benefit from financially. So in other words, I had a board member that was an attorney. And so now with one of the largest law firms in the nation, but we get over $120,000 worth of free legal services. I have every year. It's great. I mean, when you do contracts, I have 2 board members that are pretty high up in our local hospital systems. And so we have over, $300,000 in hospital contracts because we provide a service they need. They need nurses and they're not free. And so we get that benefit. We have Lavinia Masters is on our board and, she has the cachet that we need. I just, put her name on something and, people recognize her. And so, and she helps us by speaking in the communities everywhere and talks about the work that we do. And so that brings in some recognition. And so I think you just have to be creative because our individual giving or money from donations is less than 15% of our income. And so, and we've tried. I've hired people, our outreach people that wanted to do that and, would cold call 50 corporations. I mean, we're in Collin County for crying out loud. That's where everybody's moving. Toyota, State. I mean, you would think, right? We got all this money and wealth. They won't open the doors. I mean, it's rare. And so, so it's just, it's been a challenge from that perspective, but having a SANE program has been very helpful because we have hospital contracts for our services that help sustain that and the rest of our advocacy programs. Actually, that's how we pay for a lot of our advocates is not through our grants, but through our hospital agreements. And then the money that we bill for that pays the nurses' salaries. So they're PRN. And so that helps keep us afloat. Yeah, I would say that that's kind of the biggest challenge. And so just really trying to focus on looking for talent on your board. Like right now, we're finally getting someone on our board who has a PR company. I mean, I really needed someone that had marketing depth, right? I'd gone out to try to get all of these consulting agreements to beef up our website and get our name out there. Well, that's $25,000. And I'm like, I can't afford that, I mean, and so I thought, well, I can't afford to find somebody that maybe will donate that time to us but cares about the mission, right? And so got a banker. And that's the other thing I would say, I am not good at asking for money, which is a sad thing if you're an executive director. And so I'm really bad at it. And I've really made that my goal in the next couple of years to not be so shy about that. And really asking, and we have 2 bankers. I'm sure you all do too, right? We have our mortgage and our banking, where you do your banking and all those things. And I took my banker out to lunch and I was like, we have this event coming up. And she said, why don't you ever ask me for money? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, can I? She goes, yes. Like, that's why we have a community outreach. What do you need? I mean, for 10 years, I could have been getting all these people. And so then,
Wow.
and then I started thinking, well, we have an insurance broker, right? We have, so I started calling them up and I'm
My
like,
list right now too.
I'm not kidding. So we have
Wow.
a healthcare insurance broker. They were like, yeah, they've now provided lunch to all, we've been paying for lunch or hustling up free lunch at our advocacy meetings. No, they do it every year. The AIDS Resource Center provides breakfast at every one of our SART meetings. And we facilitate the county SART. And so we were paying for that. So I think it's just looking at people that you don't think would ever help you, but you don't know if you don't ask. And so I think for me, it was like asking this, even asking for the little things, which people are happy to do, saves us a lot of money. And like they want to sponsor our event, our banker and our insurance people. And I'm like, Criminy, why haven't I been doing that before? So, I mean, start there and it could get bigger is what I'm saying.
I think we need a,
Yeah.
I was gonna say we need a support group for fundraising and then a fundraising
I
class.
know, but you have the personality to want it, like you'd be good at it. I'm just like, that's not, I'm trying.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I learned something today.
I'm so grateful that my job does not include fundraising. But what, yeah, I don't want to do that. But what that results in too, the lack of fundraising or funding, but there's limited resources in our community and, everywhere. I know that all of the organizations around us have a wait list at this point. We start to make inroads to it and then it, starts to pile back up and that can be really challenging. And I think particularly with sexual assault in our community, when it comes to legal resources, housing, things like that, there is this gap. If they don't have a history of DV or, whatever we're looking for resource wise, that can be really challenging. And oftentimes, we're trying to get creative in the legal resources that we have or people we can call on for support there because there just isn't that equivalent in the sexual assault world. And then I would say the other part is the most challenging part is just the collaboration piece. That's just always a work in progress. And there are a lot of different stakeholders and in the community. And we are all working towards the same goal. However, like the path to get there sometimes is a little bit challenging, but it's worth it because it's in the best interest of the survivors that we serve. But I feel like that can be one of the more challenging pieces.
Thank you. Thank you. The other thing I want to talk about, and we got two more things to talk about, and I think that'll be the time, but so innovation, it's so important to have the great minds, the ideas at the table. And I think innovation is what's gotten you all where you are today, what a lot of you in the audience where you are today, virtually. Hello, everybody virtually, you all also where you are today. But I hear a lot of talk, like oftentimes it's flippant. Like I'll hear, oh, they're too old, they need to get out of the movement. They've been here too long. Just flippantly say that. Or I'll hear they're too young. They're like kids. They're not given any deference because they're too young. So it's like we have these two, like this generational divide when we should be having a generational opportunity. Because I feel like characteristics that are not good for our movement is when someone is a get off my lawn, it's my way or the highway type of attitude. And that's, newsflash, that isn't just older folks. That younger, I've seen younger folks that have that, I want to do it my way or the highway. And I've seen older folks who've been doing this too damn long and they're get off my lawn. And I think they do need to go on their lawn so they can yell, get off my lawn and let someone else have an opportunity. So I understand that that's happening on both ends of the spectrum. I also feel young folks, generation, what, X? No, that's me. Z, Generation Z. I feel like, is there any Gen Zers in here? Oh my gosh, yay, there's more of you this year. We need you. Like you are in demand in this field. And do not let anyone dismiss you as being too young. We need your ideas. We need your vigor. We need your freshness. We need all of that. And I think also let's not count out our older folks, our Gen Xers and millennials. Y'all are getting up there too. And boomers, we got boomers too. So let's not count out those people because they have the wisdom. They've been doing this for a long time. And I feel like the generational opportunity instead of generational divide is when we put together or combine someone who's been in the work for a long time, but they still have that curious soul. They're still innovative in their thinking. And yes, they may say to the young person, we have tried that, but you know what? How about we do it this time? Because they bring so when you put those two together, I think that's where the magic happens. So you mentioned you had someone that was there for a long time, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And I feel like what we need to look at is not necessarily someone's been there too long, but what are they contributing? Because you can always continue to contribute, or you can be someone who just doesn't contribute regardless of the age. So I wanted to say something again to the younger people. Please, 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 we hope that you stay in the movement. Also, do not let, like I said earlier, do not let anyone treat you like a child. You're not a child. You are an expert. You are a professional in this field. I also want you to know that you need, we count on you. I'm counting on you to question your boss. Question your boss's boss. Do not be afraid to do that. And if either of them can't take it, you might need to go to a different place. And those are the ones that get off my lawn, they need to get out too. I'll be honest. So I'm just saying, I've seen so many times, even when I was younger, just being silenced because you haven't been here long enough. Where I personally feel that the young ones, you all have a lot to contribute, and I hope you stay in there. Do not be afraid to question. Oftentimes, you're going to get great leaders that are going to be like, "Oh, I never thought of that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention." Of course, you don't want to come in hot, like, "What the hell are you doing?" But you do want to just say, "Hey, I'm wondering, you made this decision and I was just wondering," because oftentimes what you'll find out is there's a good reason for that decision. Or you'll have a leader that says, "I didn't think of that. And then it gets even better." So that's innovation. So I just wanted to say that. I feel like I hear too many times about the generational divide. No, it's a generational opportunity because it's, the great equalizer is people who feel entitled. I've got old folks, I've got young folks. I mean, it's all over the place. People who don't contribute. Old folks do that, young folks do that. So it's it's not about that. We need both, but we need that balance. So innovation, I wanted you all to, if whatever you want to add, how do you keep innovation alive at your programs?
I think you have to surround yourself by people who are smarter than you are. And you can't be afraid of that. You need people in your organization that can do all the jobs. And if you're insecure with your ability to do your job, or you're constantly worried that somebody's after your job, then you're not in the right position, just in my opinion. And I feel like that's how we run our organization. It's also part of I was always raised, it was called the, hit by the bus plan. Some people like to call it the win the lottery plan. I mean, my greatest fear is something would happen to me and it would affect my organization. Something could happen to me and my organization should not miss a beat. My team should keep moving. My organization should keep moving. The survivors should never know. And if that's not how your organization is running, then I encourage you to go back and think about why that is. And so you really need to empower your people and empower your team to figure out how they're doing this work and how they maintain this work. And so we've really taken a step back, I feel like, and looked at how we take care of our staff. And so at this point in the game, I still can do direct services. And if we're in the office on a Friday afternoon, sometimes I've got Izzy and Mary here with me today. We might have a client in crisis and I might be right in the middle of that crisis, but 9 times out of 10, I'm not the boots on the ground anymore. My main goal is the budget, the grants, and taking care of my team. I have 18 team members that are my responsibility to make sure that they're not burning themselves out, that they're going home healthy, and that they can continue to do this work. And if they can continue to do this work, then they can go out and take care of our survivors. And so somebody's got to take care of your team and make sure that they are healthy. And so we've really tried to build a culture around making sure that our team is healthy and taken care of, and that somebody is watching and making sure that that's the case. And somebody's calling them out on that, it's been a hard day, you need to go home. And when they say, "No, I'm fine, I'm going to go do this." No, you're going to lock up your office, get in your car. If you don't think you can drive yourself, we'll drive you home. You need to go home. And so it's a different way of looking at all of it. And we haven't always done that. And it's taken us a long time to get there. But I feel like we're always looking at new and different ways of building that team and having that support and how we make that work for us. But I feel like that's a key part of our team and how we do what we do.
Gosh, so I would say I was lucky when I came back in 2014 that I think the center had been around for a long time. And while, the name may not be, ubiquitous in the community, they were already doing good work. Like they didn't need me to come in and change what they were really doing at the time. As you grow, things have to change organically, but so that was a good thing. I think, I probably failed miserably for about 3 years and was wondering, what am I doing here? Because I had come from that mindset that you work, 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 work. You work 60-hour days. I worked in a healthcare system in a hospital, and I left for that reason. Like, I turned 50. I'm like, I don't need to be working this hard anymore. My grown kids are gone. But yet I brought that mentality with me, thinking to myself that if you're not working from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., you're not working hard, you're not doing a good job, not recognizing, self-care. I was one of those people that thought, oh, self-care, whatever, I was one of those people.
But those Gen Xers, we think that.
I know. But, fast forward, it is hard work. And I think for me, I just did a lot of the work myself. So I did a lot of medical accompaniments. I did a lot of just because we needed it, we needed the help, but it really gave me a different perspective on this work. And while things needed to change, like, well, we had a good counseling program. It was, only 3 part-time people, and they wouldn't work beyond like 10 and 2. And, there were certain things, right, that needed to grow, but, forcing people to change isn't how they change, trying to get them to see the wisdom of serving survivors and just saying that we're all advocates 24 hours a day. That's what we do. But I really had to do a mind shift. And it was hard for some people in leadership with me to do that mind shift of sometimes if you work less hours, you're working harder. You really do need a work-life balance. And I found, I was single, divorced and had a dog to take care of. So I could keep working 70-hour weeks if I wanted to, but I didn't want to. And I felt like it wasn't doing a service to my staff or to our clients for sure. So we did a lot of shifts. So we only work a 32-hour work week. And so that was a big shift that really changed a lot of things. We did that in the summer only. I started that in 2017. So we would have summer schedule, we called it. And so we would work 4-day work weeks. And we only did it then because we had an education team that was in the schools 5 days a week. And it wasn't really fair to do that year round when you only had 2 people that had to be in the schools. So we did it, during the summers, and it was a big benefit. It was a big draw, and people like that. And so after the pandemic and everyone working remotely, another big thing happened is our staff size kind of doubled. So, slowly but surely, as we got more money and more programs, our staff got bigger and bigger and bigger. And our building couldn't hold those people. So we kind of had to continue working remotely. And I don't know if many of y'all know had experienced this, but again, we did 2 internal or polls, surveys, and our counseling clients, like 70% of them still wanted to be virtual. They didn't want to come back to the office. And so that kind of drove that and allowed us to bring in more interns and more counselors to lighten their loads because they could office share because we own our building. So it was we were kind of landlocked and couldn't afford another space. We had to make do with what we had. So we were already working remotely 3 days a week. And so we made a shift to a 32-hour work week. And this last year got it approved through OAG, the governor's office, and that's what's on our grants and stuff. And so everybody either has half the staff have a Monday off and half the staff have a Friday off. That has really changed. I think that's been a big motivator and for folks, and you have to have a lot of, guidelines in place to do that,
Did you
and
say OAG and governor's office
Mhm.
approved that?
Yeah, yeah. And then we implemented a wellness program. And so we do have a wellness program, and it affords everyone $500 annually. And it was originally started because I had people that our insurance, we really encourage people, staff to do counseling, their own individual counseling. I think everybody benefits from counseling, by the way. And so they said they couldn't afford the copays, copays for some of my young staff are $40, $50 a session, and that could be $200 a month. So we implemented a wellness program that allows them, and we don't ask what the money's for. They're given the money and they can use it for yoga classes. They can use it for, whatever they want. And then we also just really stepped up our benefit package. And so we didn't have things like short-term disability, which we pay for. And so people now can have babies and we didn't have that in the beginning. And we have a pretty generous PTO policy. They get 4 weeks off a year. So in addition to 10 holidays that we're closed for, in addition to we close, I'm sure many of you do at Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's. So I think doing that just tells people that you care. We also have a yoga program. So we already have a trauma-informed yoga class that's led by, a trauma-informed yoga instructor. But now we have a counselor that has recently become certified. And so that saves a lot of money. I practice yoga. So she'll do a yoga class. We have a little studio once a week and I've found a lot of staff joining that. So we never, we didn't seem, I don't know about y'all, but we never had a lot of luck doing outside like fun activities with our people. Just didn't want to do that. I don't know why. Like we'd even try it with volunteers, we'd have the big movie night and we'd set up a big projector, like 2 people show. Yeah, right. It's just been a theme. And so we found people just want recognition or a day off, or like if you vote, you get a day off. You get a voting day off. It goes into your bank. Little things like that. People wanted more. They wanted money and they wanted time off. And so, and it seems to have kind of helped increase the morale and like you said, it helps to just stay out of the way of people and let the people that know what they do their thing. And we do a lot of surveys. That's a big thing. I really believe in not only staff surveys, but we did a survey to our SART several times. That's how we came to open Courtney Safe Place. What do y'all want? You're the folks that utilize this service. We do an annual survey to our clients and then obviously the questionnaires every time we talk to them. And so just trying to find out what your staff wants, ask them, what's important to you. And because what's important to me may not be important to you. So we try to, and it helps that I've gotten old and I like the time off too. Quite honestly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say at Darcy, I've been there since 2015 and a huge part of why I continue to stay is the work culture and the sustainability of it. I think it takes a lot, especially when you're providing 24/7 services, to make sure that those are sustained, but people are also we care about the people as people first. And bless you. And so layering coverage is really what we have found to work the best on any shift, whether that's business hours or after hours. We have multiple volunteers, at least 1 to 2 staff advocates on. And yes, that is because hypothetically, could we get more than one hotline call at once, more than one hospital call at once? Yes, that happens often, but also like people have a hard week and feel burnout, or they have a family emergency or something. And that way you're not in like constant crisis mode trying to fill the spot that's open or find somebody to take the shift and move it around. With that layered coverage, both for the on-call services and our full-time staff just work a lot better. And we see a lot less issues with that. And then, yes, just making sure, I think the work culture, we always say like the work environment this work is hard enough, like that should not be the hard part. And so having leadership that truly supports that, unlimited PTO, employee assistance. We have a hybrid work environment. So all of us are in the office 2 days a week and you can work from home the rest of the time. Obviously you can be there more if you would like, but just creating that flexibility for staff, I think, is another big piece.
I love how I asked about innovation and you answered that, but you infused wellness and self-care. So it's almost like, duh, wellness and caring for your staff. That is also a big component to innovation. So thank y'all for that. And I wanted to say that to close this out, when I think about funding, we all talked about funding and you all talked about all the wait lists that you have and around you with the wait lists that are there for counseling, for sexual assault advocacy services. And not only with these organizations that are here, but all of you out there, like I know that sometimes when the funding gets odd or weird, or you have the cogs that are kind of don't really see the big picture with us, and you get either cut or you don't get the funding, that you don't go away. Like you all stick around with or without the funding. And I think that says a lot. And I know that times are kind of uncertain and scary here and there. The state of Texas, we're doing good with our funding, but there's other things that we're a little like, well, what's going to happen? There's some uncertainty, and that's another ball that we just don't need to juggle right now. But I just wanted to say that for you all, just to thank you, because I know that even when the funding goes away, you keep doing the work, you figure it out, because we care about, we're here, we exist because sexual assault is still so highly happening in our state right now. Domestic violence is so, and so they need a place to go, and that's why we're here. And the funding is helpful, but if the funding goes away, we're not going away. That's a movement, and that's what we are. And I wanted to thank you all for sharing your information, and I wanted to thank you all because I know that that's how it is across our state. That's why we're so good. That's why we're so great. That's why other states are asking, "Hey, what are y'all doing in Texas? Man, y'all are doing great work." So thank you all. And so then that's it. Thank you. Can we give them a round of applause? And y'all, okay, so the next, we had this tweak the schedule today. So your next, sorry, I can't even talk. Your next, I promise I haven't been playing quarters. Your next class is at 10. So you have 12 minutes to get to the next set of workshops. Thank y'all so much for getting up early and being here today, and we'll see you at lunch.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much for being here at the. Okay, sorry, I was in the Spanish. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. We appreciate your attendance. We're going to start the next set of workshops at 10 a.m. So please make sure that you log in. You're going to have a longer lunch today. We have the keynote speaker today as well. So thank you again so much for everything. So sorry about yesterday. I think today went really, really well. So thank you again. We will see you later. Bye.